Hello, I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. This is the Iran War Today, our briefing, bringing you right up to date with all you need to know about the US-Israel war with Iran. We'll be live in Washington, Jerusalem and Beirut with more, and bring you analysis from our correspondents here in the newsroom. Let's start with some of today's key developments. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are in Doha to discuss the US-Iran negotiations. Iran said it has no plans to meet the US negotiators in Qatar. The small Gulf Emirate is mediating talks between the two sides, drawing on its long-standing tradition of diplomacy. Hezbollah rejects a ceasefire deal made between Israel and the Lebanese government, while Benjamin Netanyahu vows his military will stay in southern Lebanon as long as the militant group poses a threat to Israel. Iranian and US negotiators are in the Qatari capital Doha for a series of meetings only days after a dispute over the Strait of Hormuz triggered several days of tit-for-tat attacks, cutting off shipping through the key waterway. Now, the two sides will not be holding direct talks. Discussions will instead take place through Qatari and Pakistani mediators. On the US side, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, travelled to Doha for a meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister. They'll be focusing on the preliminary agreement reached with Iran earlier this month, which commits all parties to ending hostilities and opening the Strait of Hormuz. On Monday, President Trump posted on his social media platform saying, Iran has requested a meeting. It will take place tomorrow in Doha. Well, shortly after, an Iranian spokesperson said the US team's trip to Doha had nothing to do with the Iranian delegation's visit there. He added the two sides have not yet officially entered the stage of negotiating for a final agreement. Let's go to Washington. Our White House reporter Bernd Bussmann. Bernd, what do we know about this visit so far then?
Well, essentially the purpose of the visit is for the implementation of the 14-point memorandum of understanding that extended the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. As you mentioned, what they won't be doing in Doha is meeting directly with their Iranian counterparts. These meetings will take place with the Qatari and Pakistani mediators, but President Trump himself seemed to kind of caution that not much might come of this. Yesterday, when he was in the Oval Office, he said that it might be an important meeting, it might not be an important meeting, but he certainly didn't place any sort of outcome on the meeting. I think for the Trump administration, the main thing they want to see is the implementation of that 14-point plan, particularly as it pertains to the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, as you mentioned, led to some tit-for-tat strikes over the weekend and over the last few days. President Trump is very optimistic, at least publicly, that these talks are going well and that these exchanges of fire are proportional and don't necessarily constitute an end to the ceasefire going forward.
But thank you for that. Stay right there, because there's a second issue. The United States top security official has drawn criticism from Iran for his comments on the country's elimination from the World Cup. The head of Homeland Security, Mark-Wayne Mullin, said he danced a happy dance when the Iranian team was eliminated from the World Cup, adding, there wasn't a single team that we had to spend more time dealing with than Iran. Well, Iran missed out on qualifying from the group stage on goal difference after having a stoppage time winner against Egypt disallowed for a marginal offside. Let's go back to Bernd now. What's the reaction been there to this?
Well, this issue has kind of been in the whole backdrop of this World Cup. The Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security have alleged several times, without providing any evidence, that members of the Iranian team and members of the coaching staff, for example, that many of them have ties to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. They haven't said why they believe that, but that's kind of humming in the background since the beginning of the World Cup. The Iranian team has had to hold their training camp and stay overnight in Tijuana, Mexico, just across the border from San Diego. And of course, that creates complications when you're playing an international tournament, having to fly into the U.S. The Iranian team at one point alleged that they were harassed at an airport flying to their game in Seattle. So this is something that's been kind of running for a long few days. And I think the Trump administration very openly is quite happy to be rid of the Iranian team now that they've been eliminated from the tournament. They from the very outset, they seem to put quite strict rules on the movements and travel of the Iranian team coming into the U.S. Of course, this tournament did happen at a time in which the U.S. and Iran have been at war.
Thank you, Bernd. Right, let's turn to the talks again now. Iran has previously refused to sit down with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, accusing them of backstabbing when the US and Israel hit Tehran, only hours after the two sides held talks in Oman. That was back in February. We can bring in now BBC Persian special correspondent Kasra Nadji. So, Kasra, just talk us through what we're hearing about these talks.
Very confusing indeed. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of mistrust between Iran side and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. These two have been negotiating with Iran for months, last year and the year before, and twice Iran claims that in the middle of the talks they broke off and they started a war. So they're not very keen on these two special envoys of President Trump. But nevertheless, there is a need for the two sides to talk, and especially vis-a-vis the Strait of Hormuz that is threatening all this agreement that they have, the initial agreement to end the war. So they need to talk. And today the Iranians were saying that they have no plans to meet directly the Americans at any level anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that there are no talks going on. I suppose what's happening now is that there's the special envoys of President Trump are in Qatar talking to the Qatari mediators, and Qatari mediators are in touch with the Iranians in Tehran, sending messages back and forth. In the meantime, there is a technical talks going on between Iran and the US and the mediators, and that is going on. So there's a technical team in Qatar doing their own thing vis-a-vis the Qataris, but nothing to do with these talks with the special envoys of President Trump.
Kasra, thank you very much for that. Now, Kasra there was talking about Qatar, small Gulf state with a long-standing diplomatic tradition, had previously refused to act as a mediator when Tehran launched those unprecedented aerial attacks against its Gulf neighbours in retaliation for the US-Israeli strikes. However, it has since played an active role in negotiations in recent weeks after an initial ceasefire was brokered by Pakistan in April. Let's speak to our correspondent now, Carrie Davis, who's in Jerusalem for us. Carrie, what do we know about Qatar's role as a mediator here?
Well, as you say, from the very beginning, Qatar initially said that they were not going to be involved in this diplomatic engagement, and they said quite pointedly that that was because they were focused on defending their country. Now, that is because Qatar, along with many other Gulf states, found themselves to be subject to retaliatory strikes that were done by Iran after Israel and US. That Israel-US offensive began at the end of February. That was when, of course, we saw Pakistan enter the fray, and there seemed to be initially a large amount of progress. Of course, we saw the US and the Iranian delegations, senior delegations, meet in Islamabad. But then there seemed to be a level of stalling, that things didn't seem to be quite moving forward, that there wasn't an MOU agreed. There was a lot of back and forth, suggestions that they were very close, suggestions then from the Iranian side that things were being rejected, and it seemed to all have got stuck in the mud and a bit deadlocked. We've seen some reporting from the news agency AP, who have said that Qatar, and some diplomats have said that Qatar was then approached to try to stop and unpick that deadlock. And of course we know that when an MOU was signed, that Qatar was praised for its role in mediation. Qatar is interesting because, of course, while Pakistan has some skin in the game in this, Qatar has been very severely affected by this conflict and really did want this to come to an end, not least the fact that it's so reliant on the Strait of Hormuz to export its natural gas. At this particular stage, it's really difficult to know exactly what is happening behind the scenes and exactly what Qatar's role is. But of course, we do know they have a history of doing these diplomatic negotiations. They have a history of doing this with the US. So there is some form of mechanism already existing there. And it seems that they are now playing this key role in this shuttle diplomacy back and forth to try to pass messages and keep the process moving forward.
Carrie, thank you. Well, the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has rejected a security deal signed between Israel and the Lebanese government last week. The Iran-backed group has demanded Beirut abandons its direct talks with the Israeli government, with one senior Hezbollah official saying the deal was effectively dead already. The deal ties Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon, which has been occupying, to the group's disarmament, a condition many analysts say is unrealistic. Earlier today, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that his country's military would occupy the area as long as Hezbollah remained, in his words, a threat. Let's cross to Beirut, our correspondent there, Lena Sinjab. So, Lena, was this an expected response?
Yes, indeed. This is something that's been ongoing for a month with discussion even since the war in 2024 about the condition of disarming Hezbollah to stop any threats to the Israelis. But now there is a de facto occupation of big swathe of the south of Lebanon where, tens of thousands of people are, yearning to go back to. And for many here in Lebanon, they've criticized this agreement as not complying with Lebanon's sovereignty, not defending Lebanon's sovereignty, and some even went on to call it as submission to the Israelis. Of course, the criticism mainly came from Hezbollah's leaders, but also from the Speaker of the Parliament, Nabih Berri, who's somehow siding by Hezbollah. But even ordinary Lebanese, although they want to see peace in the country, they want to see disarmament of Hezbollah, but they feel that this deal has not pushed and put responsibility on the Israelis. In fact, it granted the Israelis the permission to stay because the condition of with the withdrawal is tied to the disarmament of Hezbollah. Many here see as a really difficult operation to do, and certainly not the government able to disarm the group, nor the army is equipped and capable of disarming this group. This is a group backed by Iran, trained by Iran. They have a political wing as well as the military wing, and they've rejected these calls for disarmament. The pockets areas, the pilots areas that they've suggested as an example of disarmament, where the Lebanese army will go in and be in control, then the Israelis would withdraw, could be an example. But so far, the Hezbollah, who is the one who has a stake in making this deal happen, is rejecting it.
Lena, thank you. So let's take a look now what this all means and what happens next. We can speak to our international editor, Jeremy Bowen. Hi, Jeremy. So let's focus on those talks, such as they are at the moment. Where do you think things stand?
Well, what they're doing at the moment, I've spoken to, been in contact, I should say, by text message with people who are involved in the negotiations. There are technical teams are there. Intermediaries are shuttling between them in Doha and Qatar. They are talking about numbers of issues in the Memorandum of Understanding, the so-called MOU, including Article 5. Article 5 is the issue about the freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz and the guarantee of safe passage through that. Now, it is clear that Iran is not prepared to go back to the status quo that held before the Israelis and the Americans attacked them on the 28th of February this year. They want, first of all, recognition of their role, and they proved that they have a role there and a lot of power to use it as a chokehold on the world economy. But there's also been a lot of talk about whether or not they might charge fees for that. Now, there's been some reporting in the New York Times, which is suggesting that that Oman, the country on the other side of the strait, has been talking about something involving some kind of voluntary contributions. Iran has been saying apparently that if they're going to be contributions, they've got to be compulsory. The point is, Iran does not want to go back to the way things are. And of course, there is a massive irony at the heart of all this, that right now, a very important negotiating point is to try to get from the American perspective, get things back to the way they were before America attacked Iran. So that hardly counts as progress generated by the war.
And Jeremy, can you just remind us of the time frames here that they are operating under, and what's your assessment of what happens next?
Well, in the agreement, it's 60 days, but that's extendable. They've already had a couple of weeks of that, so I think it's an absolute racing certainty that it will be extended, not least because what they're talking about is an immensely complicated negotiation. They're still talking about the Memorandum of Understanding. The Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, is not the deal. It is simply, if you like, an agenda about what it is they're going to be talking about when they get onto the serious negotiations. And the top item on the serious negotiations is, of course, the future of Iran's nuclear plans, which is always denied is for a nuclear weapon. A lot of the other countries around the world, not least the Americans and the Israelis, absolutely did not believe them when they said that. But they seem to have emerged from the war with quite a bit of it still intact. So there's loads of questions about that. For example, what happens to the enriched uranium, which is something which could be used to make a nuclear weapon. The thing that President Trump would do as nuclear dust.
Jeremy, thank you very much for that. Jeremy Bowen.
Drop your thoughts concerning this video. Let's know what you think. And don't forget to follow me on this channel by subscribing. Hit the like button and turn on the bell so that anytime I publish the next video, you will get notification. I really appreciate your time for watching. Bye.